Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Help Systems helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements to the next level by pairing with Cobalt Strike, a threat emulation tool ideal for adversary simulations and red team operations. Learn more at securityweekly.com/core-security. Workloads protected by VMware are the safest workloads in the multi-cloud. Private cloud, public cloud, any cloud. Stronger, with distributed protection to the API and everything east-west, inside, and cross-cloud. Stronger, with 3 layers of detection, trusting nothing and seeing everything, even the best hidden bad actors. Stronger, with an SE Labs AAA certified advanced NDR that brings the multi-cloud together for the win. You've got workloads, we've got security. VMware Security. Simply stronger. Visit securityweekly.com/VMware to learn more. Endpoint security is designed to protect every device in your fleet, wherever it may be. These days, that can be a lot of different places. Find out how HP Wolf Security uses emerging strategies like application isolation, along with a zero-trust approach and framework to give you a powerful, manageable, usable solution to your growing and increasingly spread-out security challenges. Learn how HP Wolf Security can make a difference across your endpoints at securityweekly.com/HPWolf.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows, or even on this show? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests, plural, guests, and completing the form. We review suggestions monthly, and we will reach out to you once reviewed. And I think you can choose the show that you send in that submission for. Also, join us April 14th to learn how to monitor your Wi-Fi network for attacks with Enzyme, a free and open source wireless intrusion detection system with Lennart Koopman, hosted by Larry Pesce and Paul Asadorian. I think that is a week from today, exactly. Then join Alan Stasilauskas and host Tyler Robinson and Paul Asadorian on April 21st. And I'll be there too, just to learn how to say his name properly. To learn how to gain visibility into your enterprise with Sysmon. Live attendees at both these webcasts will have the chance to win a $100 Hacker Warehouse gift card, and you can register at securityweekly.com/webcasts. Also, don't forget to check out the webcasts we've already done. securityweekly.com/on-demand will get you access to all of those. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW268 if you want to check out the stories we're talking about today. I typically, and this week, I think I've got commentary on just about everything we're talking about today. So there's additional commentary there if you want to go check that out. If you want to find the links, if you want to share them with friends, you can go there. All right. So not really any acquisitions this week, Tyler, but certainly plenty of fundings, and not the typical types of fundings. You know, like there's some interesting categories here, some stuff we typically don't see. Nord Security, which makes NordVPN, which if you've ever watched YouTube without YouTube, well, even with YouTube Premium, if you've ever watched YouTube, you've probably seen somebody do a sponsor segment for NordVPN at some point.
Yep.
Which that market kind of irritates me because I don't like the way they pitch it as like a panacea for all your security ailments. Which it very much is
about
not.
NordVPN, Adrian. Interesting thing about NordVPN and the, let's call it the consumer VPN model.
Yeah, sure.
Period. And I want your opinion on this because I don't know that this is true. But do you think maybe that whole VPN or consumer-based VPN business skyrocketed during the pandemic because people needed to find ways to share their subscriptions to Netflix or to get online for gambling or to, on a personal level, find ways to mask where they come from as opposed to securing what they're doing on a daily basis? where's the real demand for NordVPN coming from? Is it security, or is it the ability to mask what I'm doing on a daily basis from the end node who might be double checking my source address?
Getting around geographical controls, I think, is the number one real use case, non-snake oil use case for these products. Right. Because they give you VPN exit points in, a whole bunch of different countries. And like the UK is a big one, like if I'm trying to watch something on BBC iPlayer or something like that, it locks me out, doesn't let me watch it, and I can just switch on a VPN and be able to watch some of that stuff. I think pretty much everybody knows that Netflix and a lot of the other streaming services have different content available in different countries based on licensing. So that's a really common one. I've got no problem with it when they pitch it as a way to watch geo-locked content. Only when they're like, oh, it's going to keep you private from advertisers, and like as if cookies work differently when you're connected through a VPN. Like it's
right. Well, that's the thing about this business, right? I think the bulk of this business came from like sports. I need to mask where I come from so that I can get my local blacked out sports, or the Netflix more insert, like, and Netflix does a bunch of other stuff well beyond just geolocation checking. But for the basic ones that don't, I think that's driving the bulk of their business. And so it's kind of funny when you go to NordVPN, get 72% off NordVPN, block trackers and malware and all these things. I think the real value prop for this is masking where you're coming from so you can bypass geo blocks.
Well, it's interesting because I've actually seen enterprises that require all their employees to use it whenever they're not on corporate networks. They're on their phones and on their laptops. They're required to have one of these VPN products active.
Can I ask why? This may be a stupid question. This may turn into a hot take. This may turn into me looking stupid. But really, from the business side of this, if you're an enterprise and you're requiring your users to actually use a VPN to connect to potentially zero trust cloud-based stuff, shouldn't we be relying on the encryption transport that exists within the cloud-based SSL or whatever we're connecting to, as opposed to wrapping another layer on it?
Ding, 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 ding.
I guess I'm not so stupid after all. I'll take it.
Not so stupid. No, not at all. No, that's not even a hot take. I think most folks who are security savvy are going to agree with you there. But there's this whole kind of fringe, it's classic snake oil. It's like, you can take the medicine, you don't know if it's working or not, but you're afraid about what will happen if you don't, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when I go to NordVPN's website and I see a 72% offer for $395 a month, they are targeting the individual who's swiping a credit card. And I promise you, the individual is not swiping a credit card so that they can secure what they're doing. They're swiping a credit card to get free TV.
Yeah. And they do have other stuff. They've got like a password manager, and they've kind of expanded out into other products. But
except that Adrian, this is their first funding round of, how much was it? $100 million on a
$100 million.
A new unicorn being born on a $1+ billion valuation, right? 1.6. Yeah, so $100 million on a 1.6 valuation. You don't get that valuation without significant growth percentage the last few years. And at $3 a month, can you imagine the number of subs that are using them? I think they've cornered the consumer privacy spot. I really do.
Yeah, imagine if they were doing some good.
Well, they are. They're giving us all free TV, or they're giving us the ability to watch our blacked out local sports. Yeah. That's good to me.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I'm totally fine if they market it like that, because that is a valid use case. That is utility they are giving their customers. Customers thinking that they're somehow protected from, getting privacy protection and protection from ads and stuff like that, and some kind of security benefit. Like almost most public Wi-Fi networks you're going to connect to have client isolation enabled.
Absolutely.
I've actually gone out and tested this. It's just something I do when I'm bored, I'm waiting at the airport, or I'm working in a coffee shop or something like that. Like I'll just do some light poking testing, to see how the that open wireless network is set up, or not open network. Most of them are secured with WPA2 or even WPA3 now. But yeah, it's, this, this idea that all public wireless networks are open and very vulnerable, and other people on that coffee shop network can hack you. Yeah, it's almost never true.
Well, I mean, every time I've been to a coffee shop and been hacked, which is multiple times, the person was sitting right across from me wearing a black hoodie with it over their head, right? So I knew what they were instantly. I mean, it wasn't hard to find them.
At first, I was like, "Oh, Tyler's got some interesting, some stories from the trenches for us." Oh no, he's
just being a wise ass. Okay, I got
it. Yeah, well, it's big money. It's I mean, you can look at the whole sports nutrition, pharma. Like there's other industries where they get away with some of the same stuff, where it's, you can throw out some research papers and stuff like that, but it's very difficult for consumers to tell if they're getting any kind of benefit from these products. If, is the skin cream really de-aging? Are those wrinkles really going away?
In today's inflation economy at $3.50 a month, just so I can get my TV, I'll take it. If I get some privacy, why not?
Yeah. True. So the first story in here, not a whole lot to talk about there. It's just an Israeli fund. 220 million didn't sound like it was very big, until I realized it's a seed fund. So that'll probably stretch a good ways. The Israeli.
Not in today's seed world. No, in today's seed world, seed
well,
hits.
The seed rounds are A rounds now, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Seed runs have been like 6+ lately, especially in Israel where it's very overpriced. You're seeing 6 to 10 on seeds. I was recently involved in we'll call it an extended seed. They did a seed for 2 and then did another seed on the same note for 10. So, I mean, it's still 22 companies.
It's maybe 20. That's maybe funding 20 startups out of that 220.
Yeah, it's probably about 15 companies. But I mean, you also have to keep in mind they're going to have money for dry powder behind for follow-on for their pro ratas. So really, it's probably 10 companies with the ability to follow on in the A rounds.
That's why I'm glad you're here, because I didn't understand that last thing you just said. Like I understand what it means, but the terminology.
Yeah, so usually when these funds are getting in on the seed level, they get what's called pro rata, which gives them the right to maintain a certain percentage of the company over time. So, if they get X% on the seed round, they're allowed, guaranteed during the A round, to purchase up to that same amount of percent ownership of the company. It's called pro rata. So most of your seed guys will get pro rata. So on a $220 million fund, they might do 80 to 100 in active seed investments and keep 100 to 120 behind in what's called dry powder to exercise their pro rata in the A rounds of those companies.
Dry powder. I like that. I think I get the metaphor there.
There you go. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I learned something.
Today I learned.
So we don't usually, so basically I do a bunch of research for these news stories. I find these fundings through a variety of different sources. I've got custom searches going on. There's some really good newsletters out there. The term sheet is one. I'm going to blank on the names of the other ones. But yeah, some good VC funding.
Mike Prevet also has an excellent one. If you get a chance, Google Mike Prevet's security funded newsletter. He goes over all the security every single week. I highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah. I wasn't really prepared to share them all, but there's some really good sources that I use for getting these, and sometimes they have international ones. And number 3 is one of those interesting ones where this is a Chinese security company raising a Series E. So they've been around for a while. They're called Threatbook. And never heard of them before, which isn't too surprising. They're only really pitching the security market, but they're looking to go global. And there are a lot of security tech companies that are quite global. Like if you've ever gone to South America, or really Middle East, anywhere outside of the US, Huawei phones and Xiaomi phones are extremely popular. And it's only in the U.S. that you don't see a lot of that stuff. So I thought it was worth mentioning a pretty big up-and-coming cybersecurity company based in China. I saw them described as providing threat intel and endpoint. Their own founder and CEO makes says that they're kind of modeling themselves after CrowdStrike. So aiming to take the company public in China in the future. and go global with its product portfolio. So it could be a name that we'd be hearing about in the future.
This is an interesting one because, it reminds me of the early days of some, maybe a little while back now. I might be dating myself, but some of the Russian cyber companies that were coming out for a little while there. And they never really, most of them, with the exception of one well-known one, didn't get a whole lot of traction in the United States. And even the well-known one paid a price for being Russian and some of the connections they may have. But let me ask you a very pointed question. Would you trust threat intelligence coming from a company based in China, period, ever? I just wouldn't. Well, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it depends on the service you're getting from them, because certain intelligence, you can validate. Certain products, certain tools, are things that you can go through and you can do your own due diligence on. If it is something like that, if it's a black box and they say, trust me,
But even if you can diligence it, what's the point, right? I'd go with a U.S.-based company in a competitive landscape that's overly crowded already anyways.
Right. If it's not a totally unique service, absolutely. Right. But, so on the flip side of that, I remember when the Brazilian government pretty much pulled out of U.S. tech companies after the Snowden revelations. After they saw that the NSA was putting backdoors, intercepting Cisco hardware shipments and tampering with them. They pretty much, they said almost overnight, we're going to rip out all our U.S. based network gear overnight, and they started using Huawei gear. There's another company I can't remember the name of, based up in I want to say Finland, that makes firewalls and some network gear.
The Finnish one sounds like a reasonable replacement, but I'm not sure of the logic behind pulling out of U.S. and moving over to China. If you're big,
it was a very emotional response, right? Like we see that a lot in government. We see politicians. It's more about the optics of it than it is about anything practical or logical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else do we have here? We're not going to talk about all of these. There's some small ones, but there are some interesting ones. We've been seeing a lot of these kind of boil the ocean, but for SMB. And Coro is one of those. I think this is which number? This isn't the Israeli one. Number 4.
Number 4. Awesome. Coro.
So they're offering email security, endpoint security, like a whole bunch of stuff all in one big bundle. They might not even be the only one, because I want to say there was an Israeli one that was doing something similar here.
Well, Jerusalem Ventures was also involved in Coro. Balderton.
Okay, so it is Coro. It is Coro then. Yeah.
So you're probably blending them. Yeah, the company is based out of Mexico with substantial operations in the U.S.
I've seen startups trying to do this before. I worked with one back in the day called My Digital Shield that would basically give you like a little Fortinet firewall that was already pre-configured, and you basically put that at the edge of your business network, your small business network, and it connects to their data center. So it was basically like a Zscaler for small businesses. Sure. They'd have the big enterprise class security tools and technology that a small business would never be able to afford, but they spread it across 1,000 small businesses.
Yeah, I feel like I've missed an opportunity here over the years for sure, right? The opportunity being these direct-to-consumer or small business style plays, because clearly 300% year-over-year growth since 2015, 300% year-over-year every single year since 2015. I don't really care within reason what your base number was. If you've done 300% a year-over-year for 7 straight years, you got a big company there. And so, maybe I missed a lot of opportunity with some of these kind of unified super apps or super systems for small to mid-sized business. It's really kind of a neat play.
I think the key is going to be this the channel strategy with selling to small business, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you get that right. There's huge opportunity there. Absolutely. Because there's, millions of small businesses, like there's just not that many really large enterprises, which is typically where you see most, I'd say probably 90% of the security startups we see are focused on Fortune 100, maybe Fortune 500.
Yeah, right? It's a trade-off, right? You could target the big business and say, I'm going to do 500K deals every single deal, and I only need N number of deals, or I can target the small to mid-sized business, lop 2 orders of magnitude off the deal price, or even more, lop 3 orders of magnitude off the deal price, and say I'm just going to, literally target every single business in the world, right? It's just a different model.
Well, it's funny because with one model, scaling your sales and channel strategy is super important. On the other side, it's way more important to scale the your platform, your architecture, the the engineering side of things, right?
Lots of different ways you can slice that onion, my friend. Lots of different ways.
Yeah. Let's see what else we've got here. Airgap Networks, mainly mentioning because they went all in on the buzzwords here, all in. So it sounds kind of like a Unisys stealth product, where they're doing some kind of micro segmentation at the host level. They're, under the covers, it sounds like they might just be, managing host-based firewall policies. But
well, come on, Adrian. They deliver an agentless, zero trust segmentation platform with patented ransomware kill switch.
I will end this podcast right now if you keep reading.
How can you not buy that? Dude, I want a ransomware kill switch. I want a big one right here, a big ransomware kill switch that I can just kill it.
Yeah. So if you need a zero trust easy button, apparently they sell it. Airgap Networks. Like even the name of the company it could be on a buzzword bingo chart.
I would like to buy 5 zero trust fixers, please. 5 of them.
Oh man. Next one here is cybersecurity startup Corsha, 12 million Series A, which, Series A, are you sure that's not a seed round?
Yeah, that's small A. But I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. That's a small A.
So we have 2 interesting ones that bring MFA into things here. So basically transparent multi-factor authentication, because they're talking machine-to-machine API traffic. So I guess they're trying to address like session theft and like token theft, that kind of thing with APIs.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. So I actually did get briefed by Corsha. I really like the founding team. The founding team is very, very good. Mm-hmm. I had a phenomenal conversation with them. And the key that they're looking at is API traffic, right? Session to session API. If we start talking about microservices, it's almost like a microservices cyber play. And taking MFA concepts and applying it to service communications.
Yeah, and they had some Gartner quote in here. Gartner apparently predicting that APIs will make up the largest attack vector in cybercrime by this year. So I don't know if that's. I mean, we know how much to invest in Gartner predictions, but
I put all my money behind Gartner predictions. Actually, literally every dime I have is behind a Gartner prediction. But and if you don't know when I'm being sarcastic, that was sarcasm. API. I actually have been saying for many years now that I believe API security will become the most important component in cybersecurity. It is API security is replacing what network security was, because network security is non-existent. I just had lunch with a Unicorn CISO today, actually, and we were talking about, he's got, I don't remember, well over 1,000, 1,500, something like that, employees in the building. They have a multi-floor building in downtown Raleigh, their name on the top of the building. And he's like, we don't have anything inside the building that I care about. We have some video cameras, we have, a few little IT things, right, but there's no servers here. There's nothing of value here. We basically treat the entire building, multi-story, high-rise building, as a coffee shop. Right? And if you think of it that way, the concept of network security no longer exists. Everything is in the apps we're developing in the cloud and the systems we're building in the cloud to support our business. And at the end of the day, those apps and systems are being broken down into small chunks, which communicate over what? APIs. So APIs are going to be, if we're talking about total addressable market from an investment standpoint, APIs are going to be what networks were. And so API security will be the most important thing to replace network security in the future. I agree with Gartner. I just don't think it's this year.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, if you look at it from the attack perspective, they need something that's widely available, isn't on people's radars, everything's got an API. We don't have great API visibility right now. So absolutely that's going to become a low-hanging fruit at some point. So it makes sense for API security to be a thing. I just wonder if it's too early to market at this point.
I definitely don't think it's too early to market. I think now's the time to start those kind of companies, build them up, and ride that wave as the API growth occurs. I mean, we even see like Salt and some of the other early vendors in that space are large and or being exited already. I think it's ready for a next wave, and something like Corsha could be that.
Yeah. All right. The next one, the other MFA one here is Tru.id. And the idea here is that maybe you could use SIM cards built into mobile devices. They do have these unique IMEI IDs attached to them. So I guess there's some opportunities to use SIM cards as a unique identifier here, almost like a security key that's built into your phone.
Except that SIM cards are clonable. IMEIs are clonable, easily cloned.
Yeah.
I think the key is more of a multi, and I haven't read this particular one, so I don't know exactly what Tru does, but I'm going to guess it's a multi point or a many point kind of token that gets created, meaning, listen, if I hold my phone literally right-handed versus left-handed, the angle on the phone is different. I can tell if the user is primarily right-handed or left-handed. That's one of, let's say, 100 points that we can generate off of a mobile device. Yeah. The IMEI being one of them. If you take all of those, roll them in together into a digital fingerprint of the owner of the device, maybe you've got something here.
I don't think it's that. I think it is just a SIM card, and it would be interesting to hear their response, when talking about the threat of cloning.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it too.
Yeah. So it's and I don't. So it's one of those things where, there are phones with, I think they have TPMs in them now, at least Apple devices tend to. Like that's what I know the Touch ID sensor was directly connected to and interacted with the TPM in some way. But I don't think every phone does. And that's one of the challenges here. I think that's why they went after SIM. Is you don't want to be in that position that Bromium was in a ways back, where they're like, yeah, this amazing security technology works with 40% of your devices in your organization, and everything has a SIM card. So, maybe it's a compromise.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't read the article. I didn't dig into them. I would love to get a briefing from them if they're listening and hear more about it.
But those companies that do authentication based off of like 99 different aspects, like your walking gait, right? Like pulling information from the accelerometers in the phone, the phone in your pocket, knows you have a slight limp on the left side or something like that, knows that you're left-handed. Like I haven't seen one of those companies, I forget the name right now, it's probably for the best, won the Innovation Sandbox at RSA maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Nothing came of it. Like you go to the Glassdoor and people are like, yeah,
but I don't think
there's a product.
I don't think that's a function of the lack of efficacy of what they were trying to pull together. I think that's a function of the market doesn't give no, I don't think they give a hoo-ha about mobile security in that respect anyways. There's just no demand. I bet you the tech is fine. Yeah. There's just no market demand around it.
That's the thing that amazed me about Zimperium is I was like, I think one of the mistakes of, and we talked about this last week, you were all in on mobile security, but, my point was always, look, these mobile operating systems were created in a time of distress, when, we had been hit by Code Red, we had been hit by SQL Slammer, like we're very aware of the threats to operating systems in the time that these operating systems were created. And very early on, and even today, mobile operating systems get a lot of the coolest security features long before mainstream operating systems do, because they don't have the same legacy requirements. You can do isolation between different processes on iOS and not have a big impact to the user. It does limit app developers to some extent. Like it's really hard to make any kind of security product for a mobile phone when they have such isolation between processes. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how some of this stuff goes. Because I still want the smartphone to be my second factor for everything. I don't like the idea of carrying security keys with me. I don't want to have to. YubiKeys work well. I just don't want to have to carry them.
I agree. Why? I mean, and I've been saying this for years. Anybody who solves that problem will be very, very rich and create a huge company. But I don't know. We've solved it like a couple times, and it never gets there.
It's called Duo.
Exactly, and it still never gets there.
Yeah. Let's see what else we have here. SeeMetrics was an interesting one. There's not okay. Before that, Nudge Security number 8 here. Interesting one because Ballistic Ventures, I think had Kevin Mandia was one of the partners or was involved in that in some way. He also had, I'm trying to remember some of the other folks. DeWalt, was DeWalt part of Ballistic Ventures?
Probably.
So I think this is their first funding. I think the article said that this was their first funding. So I guess that's notable in itself. Also notable that these are 2 ex-employees that were kind of high up in AlienVault starting a new company. Not a whole lot of details on what the product is going to be, but just based on the people involved, looks like it could be super interesting.
Yeah, their website pretty much says nothing, just that they're a stealth cybersecurity startup on a mission to secure modern organizations through the power of the modern workforce, whatever that means. And they talk a little bit about OT, organizational technology. So literally that's all we have to go on this one. And the fact that, there's people behind it, a little bit of money, $7 million is a pretty solid seed. So yeah, we'll see what emerges from this one in the future.
And DeWalt's not involved with Ballistic Ventures. I'm mixing that up with something else, probably just conflating the fact that Kevin Mandia and DeWalt were colleagues at one point when he ran the organization before Kevin Mandia took over FireEye as CEO. SeeMetrics, number 9 here. Very interesting one. Also kind of, it's seed stage, so I can't be too disappointed that there aren't more details, but I really want more details on this, because the value, the pitch here is better KPIs for CISOs, and it's something that's desperately needed. So I want to know how it's going to work. I mean, it's got to be doing tons of integrations with other existing products, because it sounds like the actual product here is going to be more of a reporting piece, a dashboard for all your dashboards.
Yeah, I think there's some kind of unification play here, integration-based unification play with scoring is my guess. Connect to all your tooling, all your infrastructure, and come back with some kind of scoring about how you're doing in some kind of unified dashboards. I don't know. We're going to have to see where this one goes. I do know that Workbench is a solid investor. They're no dummies. I know Kelly Mack over there, and we've had him on. I think we've had him on this show before. Love Kelly, and he doesn't invest in garbage. So I think there's probably something here. We just haven't seen enough of it yet to know.
Yeah. I know some people involved. Either I forget if they're individual investors or on the an advisor here, but yeah, based on the people involved, again, like this is something worth keeping an eye on. Absolutely.
Yep. Now the next one, however, Adrian, is a huge seed round of $500K.
I was gonna skip right over that.
Okay, never mind. Go to the next one. Skip it.
Yeah, and the acronym there, always an awkward acronym. I won't say why. I'm just gonna go on to the next one, and you can check out the show notes if you're curious.
Yeah, I'll just say the word once or twice, WAP, but we won't explain why it's tough to talk about.
Number 12, trust issues. This is part 3 of, Rob Reck always has some interesting stuff to say. I didn't realize he was at Red Canary, but he's the chief trust officer there. And I think it's regardless of what you think about having an executive level trust officer, what your thoughts on that might be. I think it's a very good conversation about setting expectations with your customers and building a trusted relationship. And it's one of these things that sounds ridiculously obvious. Do what you say, fulfill your promises, but it's an incredibly important conversation to have, especially when you start getting into some of the stuff that I'm involved with now, which is building roadmaps for a cybersecurity product. That's one of my responsibilities now. And already I am, kind of deep in that that role of what, we got to be careful with what we promise, and the expectations that we set with customers, because over promising and under delivering is not a great way to build a trusted relationship.
Yeah, no, on this one, in particular, I think the sentiment is pretty clear and pretty appropriate, right? Say what you're going to do and then do it, and live up to the ethics, morals, and hype that you state overtly, right? Don't overcommit, don't undercommit, but deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. I think the bigger question is, how does that happen in a way that is meaningful in the largest enterprises, right? Is that a CISO role that we put right in the role of CISO, or is there a need to break out a human being to dedicate to this task at an executive level? That's where I'm going to definitely just hold back my cards and say I have no idea the right way to roll this one out. But I think at a fundamental level, the concepts hold true. They ring true.
And given the difficulties of hiring logistics, this can be really tough calculus to get right. I was talking to another unicorn cybersecurity CISO the other day, and he was talking about how he needed to hire a couple hundred people, 100 to 200 people by the end of the year, and like how do you correctly estimate what you're going to do, 2 quarters away when you need to hire 100 people in that same amount of time, and whether or not you're able to hire that 100 people is going to have a huge impact on whether you can deliver on what you're promising.
Yep. There's always that forecasting side of what we do as we grow businesses.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's drop down to the only reason I included number 15 is because there's so many opportunities for Dune memes with Australia's Red Spice program here.
Absolutely.
Red Spice, believe it or not, is an acronym. Every letter in Red Spice means a thing, and like most federal acronyms, they very much came up with the acronym first and went out to find words to fit into it later.
So it stands for resilience, effects, defense, space, intelligence, cyber, and enablers.
Why is space in there?
Sense. I don't know. I don't get it at all.
Because you can't, they needed space for not one, but it's the only word in there that's responsible for 2 letters of Red Spice. You can't spell Red Spice without space, even though it has nothing to do with cybersecurity.
Wow. Yeah, no, I definitely think this one's a marketing acronym looking for a home. Let's figure out how to make it say Red Spice, because that's cool.
And I'd apologize to Australia, but they're all making fun of it too, so I feel like it's okay. I feel like I have permission.
They're making fun of it. Yeah, and for sure. There's no doubt in my mind they're sitting there, having a brew or two and making fun of it. No doubt in my mind.
On a more serious note, I wonder if it is somewhat of a response to the White House announcing that they've earmarked a little over $10 billion for cybersecurity. This is 9.9 billion Australian. I'm not exactly sure what the exchange rate is, but Australia is a lot smaller than the U.S. But in terms of population, that's a big number for them, I think.
It's about $0.75 US for sure. A better question is, I would know I would like to know the dollar budget commit to head count, or to people,
1,900,
or the dollar budget commit to square miles of country. That would be kind of an interesting ratio.
So the number of people I saw was 1,900. They're talking about hiring 1,900 cybersecurity focused people. I think they were talking about hiring more, but they're not all going to be cybersecurity focused. So it's a little vague on exactly how they're going to use this 9.9 billion Australian dollars.
9.9 billion divided by 1,900. I think that's a salary I want. I think. Yeah. I'm not doing the math in my head. I'm guessing because I'm not good at math.
They're going to buy some Blinky boxes too. You're going to factor in the pew pew maps and the Blinky boxes.
Yeah, all the pew pew maps. Those are wicked expensive. I can't. You can't put a price on those.
It's going to take down that salary. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Ubiquiti is still I think they're suing Brian Krebs for it's a ridiculous amount. I forget how much it is, but it's like millions and isn't it millions? But I mean, suing for a defamatory claim here, I mean, almost inevitable. Brian is going to come back with a anti-slap suit.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. I mean, and at the end of the day, Brian is one of the most consistent data-backed reporters I have ever seen in cybersecurity. There is no way this works.
This is. I'm just amazed at the hole that Ubiquiti has just consistently dug for themselves. I mean, they make such good kit. I use it here. I'm connected with it right now. It works great. But they really need somebody with a clue stick on the PR side over there to tell them this is a terrible idea. Please do not sue Brian Krebs. We do not need that kind of heat.
I think it's a little bigger than a clue stick. I think it's potentially a clue bat, or maybe even like,
run them over with a clue car.
Clue car. Any of those would work.
With a clue car.
Yeah.
I want to love this company, make great stuff, but please make better decisions with with your political moves here. Good Lord. And your security moves, because all this came of the big breach they had, and they didn't handle that breach very well either.
Yeah.
So a lot of lessons for them to learn. Hopefully they do eventually learn it. I don't think this will go well for them. Let's see. I think I'm going to jump right down to the squirrel story, and we're going to wrap things up here. Elon Musk acquired nearly 10% of ownership of Twitter, more than Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter. I think he's now the largest shareholder of Twitter. I think that's correct.
I believe he is. And I also believe, if I recall correctly, they added him to the board. Yeah, they did. They added him to the board based on the fact that he's a 9.4% shareholder, which is the largest individual shareholder of all of Twitter. Listen, man, this is one of two things. This is either a true recognition of value, and this is where people are getting their news from, and he wants to control the news. That's the most likely. Or it's just a full-on flex, just to piss off some other, overly egotistical people like Dorsey and others, and just be like, hey, I can grab you whenever I want to grab you. It's one or maybe a mix of the both, but either way, I think that it's probably, wise idea to watch what happens to Twitter stock price over time based on this news, because I promise you he's not putting that much money behind a system that he doesn't think is going to go up.
I get the impression Elon Musk very much likes the attention he gets on Twitter. And he's investing in that heavily.
Dogecoin was not created because he needed another coin. It's because his ego's enormous.
Yeah. And of course, within moments of that happening, he tweets, do you want an edit button? A Twitter poll asking, do you want an edit button? And so the very last story that I have attached here is from the ancient days, especially in terms of Twitter and the internet of 2016, January even, beginning of 2016. There's a great read on why enabling the ability to edit tweets is a terrible, terrible idea. And as just one example here, imagine a giant global brand retweets somebody's tweet because it says something nice about them. And then 30 minutes later, they edit that tweet to say something horrible.
Ding dong. I love it.
That's the big example here. So,
hey, Adrian, I'm going to put out a really, really nice, kind tweet of yours here in a little bit. You go ahead and retweet that, okay?
Okay.
I'm coming for you.
I'll do it just to see what you do to it, just because I want to see what happens.
There's no edit button. I can't do anything about it yet. There's no edit button.
Yeah. So it's interesting. They do have a subscription now. I don't know if you're subscribed to Twitter Blue, which does give you like a buffer where it's kind of like that delayed email. I think Google had that as an experimental feature where you could actually delay sending your email for a minute or 30 seconds or something like that. So when you have that oh shit moment that you forgot to attach the attachment, or maybe you said something really heated and you want to take it back, you have a chance to take it back. Twitter now has that. If you're a Twitter Blue subscriber, you can actually delay the sending of every tweet that you send, so you can scramble back to it and go fix it. So that's the closest we've been to an edit button so far.
Absolutely, because that couldn't be implemented in whatever third-party system you're using to do your tweeting in the first place.
Right.
I think that's a silly feature. I mean, if you use anything other than the default Twitter thing, you can have scheduling, you can have all these features.
Sure. Yeah, the only problem has been that most of the non-default apps for doing stuff with Twitter are either terrible, or Twitter keeps changing their APIs and breaking features in those apps.
Yeah, that's also probably true.
All right, that's our squirrel story for today. That's our Enterprise Security Weekly podcast for today. Time to wrap it up here. Thanks so much for Tyler for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Great, and a pleasure as always to see you again.
And a big thanks to everybody watching or listening. I would encourage you to watch. There's more and more visual stuff that goes on. I'll blame it on our amazing production crew who come up with great graphics on the fly while we're having an interview with somebody. Absolutely. How can we not take advantage of the on-screen graphics and the stuff that our production crew can do? So I urge you to watch this. If you're just listening to it, that's okay too. But thank you to the audience, and we will see you next week.